In this video, I'm going to explain why I am, in principle, pretty much against the idea of reviewing board games and other artistic/creative endeavors. I hope that this is going to be the first in a series on art and artists where I explore such themes as being compensated for artistic endeavors, society's value of art, the ethics of money-making options for artistic types, the removal of gatekeepers and publishers from the picture, or not necessarily the removal, but the diminishing role of publishers in the process, the rewarding of assembly line frequent output of creative elements, the artistic process itself as viewed by different people such as game designers, authors, musicians, and so forth, copyright and trademark of creative products, mental health and creative people, and issues like at what point does an artist's personal life interfere with the enjoyment of their art? So I've got a lot of topics that I'm not sure exactly how this series is going to come together, but I'd like to cover all these points at some point. Okay, the double point wasn't the best speaking I've ever spoke. And I do realize that I did previously start a series on my very favorite art form, which is the art form of tattooing, and I only got 3 videos into a planned 8-video series, so I do intend to finish up that series at some point and hopefully intersperse this video with the regular videos I do about board games and books and so forth. I just have a lot of things I want to talk about, so those are some things that hopefully you can look forward to coming from me in 2021. However, let's focus on the idea of reviews in this video. I'll get straight to the point. I don't feel comfortable with reviewing board games, films, other forms of creative endeavors. I just don't think that that's the right way to approach art. The end. Well, I guess I should expand on that, shouldn't I? So, here's what I don't feel comfortable with. When I see game reviewers either building up or tearing down a game design, I just can't help but thinking, this person has probably never designed a game in their life, and yet here they are building or breaking reputations of game designers based on, to a certain extent at least, their subjective opinions of whether or not they enjoyed the creative product that was presented to them. It's the same with movies, I would expect. How many film critics have made their own feature-length movies? It's weird to me that somebody who is not involved in that creative process can make or break the reputation of a creator. Plus, that's just misses the whole point of art. Art is something that should be experienced on an individual level, and it will be experienced differently from person to person, even in something as structured as a game with a set of specific rules that need to be followed. Of course, for my argument to work, we do have to accept that board games are art, which I'm not going to say they're 100% art, they're not only art, but I think if we say that writing is an art form, if books are art, then surely game design must be an art form too, in a way. It's not the only purpose, it's not the only thing it is, but I would say that board games are artwork. They are a form of art and creativity. They kind of lump into that whole kind of sphere, I think. If you disagree with me, leave me a comment. We'll fight it out in the comment section. Or at least we'll work together to come towards a mutual understanding. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think it makes sense. Now, yes, in the instance of games, you can have objectively broken games. Games that just don't work as they were intended to work. And I suppose you could have objectively bad writing if you're reviewing a book or acting in a movie and that sort of thing. And so that's why on the flip side of this, I'm conflicted. Because when it comes to board games in particular, I do consume a lot of reviews, and I have for many years. Ever since I got back into the hobby in about 2003, I've read and watched hundreds of board game reviews in order to help me guide my purchasing decisions. So they've been extremely helpful to me in that regard, and in a sense have saved me from spending money on games that I wouldn't necessarily enjoy, and have helped me find games that I have enjoyed a lot. So the part that makes this so difficult for me is the fact that reviews have been so immensely useful to my board gaming hobby. With books as well, I suppose I do look at recommendation lists, for example, of people's favorite fantasy series to see what I should maybe read next. And that has had very mixed results, because even more so than games, the enjoyment of books is such a personal thing. And you can continue going down that route to talk about fine arts or visual art, like with paintings. Do people write reviews on a series of paintings that are presented in a gallery? I assume that's a thing. How could you possibly, though, review somebody's paintings? That gets way too muddy for me to even find helpful or to consider useful in any way. So in that sense, there's a bit of a continuum even based on the medium you're talking about. Here's the other thing about reviewing artwork and creativity that I haven't even mentioned yet, and that is the fact that a game design, a piece of art, a book is somebody's baby. It's something that somebody has poured hours and hours into and really poured themselves into. I mean, I've dabbled in game design. I've designed at least one game through to the playtesting stage, and then realized that it wasn't a super fun game. It was okay, but not something that really sparked a real interest. But at least I have a concept for just the sheer amount of effort that goes into designing a game. And I think for most creative types, it's got to feel so personal when people are examining their work in the manner of a review. And I'm sure that some people are better than others about kind of letting others' opinions kind of slide off their back or be taken really personally. But there's just that aspect of that is somebody's baby that you're really kind of either tearing down or building up. And I just don't feel overly comfortable doing that. This internal conflict carries forward very much into my own YouTube channel here, because I had decided that I would not be a board game reviewer. When you see me talk about board games or books or music, I just talk about thoughts that come up as I'm experiencing the game or the book or the music. I sort of focus on things that strike me as being interesting or thought-provoking, or something that just triggered something in my mind that caused me to talk about something. So in that sense, it's more of a conversation about my personal experience with the thing. And somebody recently wrote the most amazing comment on one of my YouTube videos that I feel really captured the tone of my channel much better than I could have done if I had tried to describe it. I'm going to read what that person wrote, at least the first couple paragraphs of it. So this person said, "I found your channel recently when considering buying Gloomhaven, which is unsurprising since those are your 3 most popular videos by far." Unfortunately, because at least one of them is one of my earliest videos too, so I find it kind of cringy to watch. But I already digress. The writer continues, "While I appreciated the reviews and explanations, I was surprised to see you go into detail on the impact that the game had in your life, and also that the personal element commanded such a prominent, important place among the presentations. I decided against picking up Gloomhaven, knowing my audience, but I had to subscribe because your style was refreshingly honest and non-sterile, which makes you stand out among most video creators, not just board game focused ones. Many adopt the stereotypical presenter persona or style to promote and lend a professional appearance to their work. And it usually works out okay because people expect a spokesman or someone speaking from authority in the format. I only point this out to highlight the contrast to your videos, which, while obviously practiced and prepared ahead of time, to a certain extent, don't feel trumped up or artificial. I don't feel like you put on a mask before hitting record, and that goes a long way to lending credence to your words. The blooper reels manage to impart a lot of humanity into what are already some of the most human productions I've seen in a while." Now, that blew me away. It was just, first of all, the nicest things anyone could possibly say about the work that I do on YouTube. But I think they hit on something in my approach into just talking from a very personal perspective about my own subjective experiences and feelings and thoughts as they relate to whatever I'm talking about. And that's why I even put in the disclaimers to my videos the fact that this is not a review. This is simply me talking about whatever I want to talk about. So yeah, in my own head, I've been very much of the mind that I am not a reviewer. I will not review things even if I am asked to do so. And yet, when I started to think about this particular video, I realized that there have been a few exceptions to that. I just want to pause for a second here to send out a thank you to my Patreon supporters, Tommy and Joanna, as well as to my other supporters, NQD and Cheryl O, for your help. It really gives me a lot of motivation to keep doing what I'm doing, and I appreciate it immensely. I will mention that I have actually just started a Patreon exclusive video series. Even though I only have 2 supporters on Patreon, I'm starting this series to talk about my personal life in terms of how I ended up on disability. So it is covering my lifetime because I've always dealt with some kind of chronic illness. It's always been a part of my life. And it's just a little too personal for me to put out there on YouTube for public consumption. So I thought I would do that as a Patreon exclusive. If you're interested in checking it out, then feel free to just sign up on Patreon, $2 a month, watch the videos, and then basically take yourself off of it again. That's totally fine. If you just want to watch those videos, I don't have a problem with that. And I am very grateful for support in any way it comes, even if it's just as simple as clicking the subscribe button, watching my videos. It all means the world to me, so thank you. On BoardGameGeek.com, I've written a grand total of 3 reviews between the years of 2009 and 2014. Now, I'm quite proud of those reviews. They, like pretty much everything else I do, they are different than your standard review format, and they are very detailed and I think are very interesting. I was just actually rereading my review of Machi Koro and actually made myself laugh out loud a couple of times because I had forgotten what I had written and thought it was quite amusing. In fact, that was the first time a publisher contacted me and said, "Can you review my game?" And I said, okay. So they sent me Machi Koro. I wrote up this really long, detailed review. And then the same company, Pandasaurus/IDW Games, then out of the blue sent me the game X-Files, which I've never seen the TV show X-Files, and the game itself got atrocious reviews on the Board Game Geek website. So I didn't end up reviewing that game, even though they sent it to me. So there was that one I did, but then a couple others that I did just because they were 2 of my favorite games and I wanted to talk about them in comparison to other things. So they were very comparative reviews, which I felt would be helpful in their own way. And now, since starting this YouTube channel, I've had a couple of game designers contact me. The first designer offered to send me a game to review, and what he said was, "I'll send you the game, you can have the game. If you enjoy it, you can do a review for it, and if you don't enjoy it, just keep the game and don't worry about doing the review." And I was like, I'm not really comfortable with that. It would feel slightly dishonest to you as the viewer if I simply didn't review it because I didn't like it, and thus saving the designer and publisher from getting a negative review of the game. But I didn't feel right about that particular situation, even though it was a game that I probably would enjoy, and at least the style of the game is one that I tend to enjoy quite a bit. So from that point I was pretty determined not to accept any games to review. But then I recently got contacted by another designer who offered to send me a game, and I took a look at the game, and it's this little game, very historical, based on a specific historical set of events. It's a 1 to 2 player game, and it's very simple and quick playing, so everything about it looked right up my alley. So I was like, what do I do? Do I stick to my guns and be the non-reviewer? And that was kind of my initial response. I basically wrote back to the designer and said, I don't really do reviews in the sense that you normally see them, where people will introduce the game, give a brief rules overview, then go over their review points. I said that if I were to make a video about the game, it would be more in the sense of talking about the history that the game relates to, and maybe how the game made me feel while I was playing it in relation to the history and that sort of thing, so it wouldn't necessarily be a proper review. And I also said that, unfortunately, I've lost my gaming friends, and so there's a pretty good chance I'll only get to play it solo. Although I can maybe drag one of my brothers into playing the game with me a couple of times to try the two-player game, but in any case, I couldn't guarantee that I could play it more than just on my own. But the designer said, no problem, that type of video sounds good. It's certainly designed as a two-player game, but if you can only do it solo, so be it. So I said, okay, send me the game. I'm interested in checking it out. I've ordered a book that covers the history that the game is representing, so I'm going to be reading up a bit on the background to it. And then at some point next year, I'll get around to making a video about this particular game. So I'm sort of finding ways to work around my levels of discomfort, I guess, which goes to show that it is not a clear-cut black and white issue, just like most things in life are not. So yeah, those are my complicated feelings towards reviewing board games and art in general. Does any of that make sense? Do you know what I'm talking about? Does any of that resonate with you? Am I crazy in thinking that reviewing board games and other art forms are not a healthy approach to art? Even though they can be so immensely helpful, at least in the context of board games. I'm dying to hear your thoughts, so please do leave a comment for me and tell me what you think about all of that stuff. Hey, it's Josh. You know why I'm here. Sometimes you just need that friendly reminder to give a little thumb up, to subscribe to the channel, to share the video with somebody who would enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers. I hope that this is... Society's view with a set of rules, things, or that I'll get straight to the point. I just don't know if reviewing what is my point?